The wonderful part about being on the ocean is to really enjoy nature in its realm, to hear the quiet, to hear the birds chirping in the background. Maybe, if you're lucky, a whale coming up for a breath. Maybe hearing some sea lions in the background. Hearing the waves hit up against your boat. This is the wonderful part about being on the ocean. It's one thing that I, as a biologist, marine biologist, have been able to participate in and enjoy for a long time. But then there's the other part of being on a boat where you hear the workings of the boat. You hear the engines. You hear the noise of everything that goes on, the smell of that diesel gas that you have. And you're just like, ooh, I really wish I didn't have to smell that. I really wish that didn't ruin my experience here on the ocean. And there has been an effort, a large effort, to get more electrified on the ocean. Not getting electrocuted, but electrified in your boat. And so that means a quiet engine. That means you're able to enjoy nature as it's supposed to be enjoyed, and plus cause less noise and disruption in the ocean. You can be on the water more without feeling guilty, especially if you were worried about noise and whales and how everything affects there. Well, today on the episode, I am speaking with Simon Angus from Open Water Solar. He is here to talk about his business, where he has created durable, flexible solar panels to go onto your boat to help you get more electrified on the water. And it's amazing, and I can't wait to show you. So let's start the show here on the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And on today's episode, like I said, we have Simon Angus, who is the CEO of Open Water Solar, a company that makes flexible, durable solar panels for your boat. This is a way to help you stay with electric sources of energy. This is a way to get your boat running quieter on the ocean. And I think it's a way that we need to move forward. And I feel like the industry is moving forward. In the interview, Simon highlights how the industry is really moving towards being more electric, going towards a hybrid model instead of just the diesel model and just an engine model, a diesel powered model. I think that's really good. I think it's a step in the right direction, especially from a commercial space, which is where the Open Water Solar is focusing on. It is really a necessary item, as Simon says in this interview. So this is a really important interview, especially if you are someone who loves to be on the water, on a boat. This is something that you really need to listen to, and I can't wait for you to hear the entire interview. Here is the interview with Simon Angus from Open Water Solar. Enjoy, and I will talk to you after. Hey, Simon, welcome to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about Open Water Solar?
Absolutely, Andrew. Let's fire ahead and let's go.
All right. I love this. This is going to be a ton of fun. I'm so pumped about this. I love boats. I love being on the water, but I don't know much about being on the water because I haven't been enough, because I live in Ontario and I don't have access to boats and stuff like that. But we're here with Simon. Simon is a guy who loves the ocean, just like us, and he loves to be on the water, and he is solving a problem right now that he had himself, and we're going to talk about that problem and why it's so good for everybody else to have. So we're going to talk all about that and why it's good for the ocean, and I'm super excited. But Simon, before we get into that, why don't you just let people know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a mechanical engineer. I spent 20 plus years in the oil and gas industry.
Okay.
Counter to what we're trying to do now. But in 2019, being an engineer and a sailor, I made a break, and I left my pretty well paying job to be broke for the next 5 years. And I designed and built a 40-foot carbon fiber all electric sailing catamaran. And really that's where this started, is we wanted to produce an all electric boat that was truly sustainable in terms of its power consumption, that there was no diesel generators, right. And it was fully electric, and we failed, but we had success in another fashion, which we'll talk about.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I love how it's like, and we failed, but we had success in something else. I think that's the life of an entrepreneur in problem solving, right? I think it's really
Very
interesting.
much so.
Let's go back into your life becoming a mechanical engineer. Were you always interested in becoming a type of engineer or an engineer in general?
Yeah, I was in school. I was good at maths and science, so nobody who who's good at maths and science goes and does anything else generally than engineering. So I went and did that, but I had a love for the ocean.
Yeah.
So back then I couldn't afford a boat. I was a poor student, so I had a windsurfer, and so I spent every weekend I could, and even some university days when I should have been in lectures on the water, sailing around and having fun on a windsurfer. And it was only when I moved to Canada that I just was like, wow, like this coastline is amazing, and the quality of life,
Yeah.
the sort of the extra income that I had
Yeah.
allowed me to purchase my first boat.
So I have to ask, like, so windsurfer, do you mean like, surfboard with the triangular sail and you're like standing on? Is that the windsurfer you're talking about? Or are you talking about like a specific boat that's a windsurfer?
No, like windsurfing. So like the board,
Windsurfing.
sail, the mast, and
Yeah.
yeah, we were, yeah, we had a lot of fun. We were big wave sailors back then, back
Uh,
in the '90s.
and I and I love that, but now this is the UK we're talking about, right?
Yep.
That's some cold water. That's not
Oh
some
yeah,
warm
you want a
water.
pretty good wetsuit if you're in the Irish Sea and you're windsurfing, and there's only ever wind in the winter, right? It's never in the
Right.
summer. So we spend time in the winter down by the ocean.
So like what's the temperature of the water at that point? You're talking about winter time. What's the
Really
temperature?
cold.
Yeah.
I've actually skated down the beach on ice to go windsurfing. Maybe that session only lasted half an hour.
Hey, but you did it. You did it. You could say you skated to go windsurfing. I love it. That's such a
Exactly.
Canadian thing to do as well, right? I love it. So and like you got into it because you loved it, but I mean you really have to love it, when you first pick up that windsurfing board, right? Because it's you're in cold water. It's not ideal conditions like in the tropics, like what we normally see. What made you like your mindset? It was like, no, I know it's going to be cold, but I want to try this out.
It's just that thrill.
Yeah,
It's just you and nature, right? And it's that
yeah.
thrill of jumping and looping and just having fun on the waves and just being out there. It's just you and nature and having just a ton of fun.
Yeah, it's not an easy sport to do. Like, I know that I have a friend who did it here in Ontario. How long did it take you to get the hang of it?
It took a couple of years to pick it up, but once you've got the bug, that's it. You're hooked, and it's like any sort of water sport. You get hooked, and it's like a drug.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And like you said, you're out on the ocean. It's you in the ocean, right? And no matter what the conditions are, obviously it's going to be a little wavy. It's going to be because it's windy, and you're kind of at the behest of this massive body of water. You really get the idea of like this is huge. Like this, I'm in a place that is beautiful. It's gorgeous. It can be dangerous at times. I'm going to be as safe as possible, but this is a lot of fun to be around, right?
Oh yeah, I'll remember one point in time when me and a buddy were sailing, and we always sailed in pairs, and the masts we used were 4.6 meters high, and he was on one side of the wave, I was on the other, and I lost the sight of his mast. The waves were that big, and so I thought he'd gone down,
Oh
and about
no.
15 seconds later, he popped over the top, and I'm like, "Oh, there you are, Damon," and he's like, "Yeah, I nearly got munched on that one."
Oh my
So
god, that's insane.
just the sheer power, you
Yeah,
understand that you get another respect for nature as well.
100%. Yeah. Now, when you came over to British Columbia, like you go all the way to the UK to British Columbia. Was it for a job then? Is that like you got a job in Canada?
Yeah, exactly. So I went to Kitimat initially, and I worked at a pulp mill, and
Okay.
so I ended up on the west coast, and I'd never seen
Okay.
anything more beautiful in my life.
Yeah. Now, was this so you worked in oil and gas in the UK and then came in and worked in a pulp mill here?
Yeah, well, engineer in sort of various fields.
Okay.
So coming out
Gotcha.
of university, but
Okay.
moved to sort of Canada with the family, and then Kitimat was a place on the west coast of about 8,000 people,
Yeah.
and it snowed about 6 feet per day in the winter. But the odd day when it was sunny in the summer,
Yeah.
and you're sailing on the ocean, and there's 1,000 foot waterfall coming off a mountain straight into the ocean. It doesn't get any better than that.
It definitely doesn't. Like the just the scenery of British Columbia in general, with the backdrop of forests, ocean, and mountains,
Mhm.
makes it just absolutely ideal from if you're a photographer or just somebody who just loves to sit and relax. It really makes you think about how impactful nature can be to your just your mental health in general, right? Like you
Oh,
can just
absolutely. I actually
yeah.
have a goal which I want to execute on very quickly in the next couple of years. Is that's to ski, to mountain bike, and sail in the same day.
Oh yeah, that's
So
possible in British
we
Columbia.
that's very possible. We can do that. So it's
Oh wow.
yeah.
You should vlog that. You should film that because I would love to see that. That'd be a kind of a cool thing. I think that would do well on something like YouTube to be
I
like,
think
I'm
so.
going to
Yeah.
ski, mountain bike, and sail on the same day in the ocean. That's fantastic. So and so you're working for you're working for industries at this time, like various industries, but they're industries that using natural resources like oil and gas, pulp and paper. They
Mhm.
have this and I've been there too. Like I've worked as a private consultant, environmental consultant before with oil and gas and mining industries. I didn't work with pulp and paper, more mining, especially that I specialize with, to make sure they're following regulations. And obviously engineers have to meet certain numbers and regulations for various aspects of what the job they're doing, right? What was your thought process when you're doing it? You love nature so much. You're working for these industries. Obviously, you're trying to do the best job you can. Did you ever wonder, like, because I did this. I'm like, I wonder, like, is this really worth it? Like, is
Mhm.
this the kind of industry that I want to be in, where I know it's harming the environment, but I need a job and I want to be able to do something, but something in the back of my head's like, I feel like I need a change.
Very much so. It does trouble you when you're in that world, and my response to that is, well, it can be done sort of efficiently and effectively, and with minimal effect to the environment,
Right.
and I'd rather me as an engineer do that than an accountant. And I fell out with accountants a lot of times because they're saying we've got to monitor the books, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
you know, because it's not environment friendly or it's not safe, right?
Yeah.
So those two come first before profits. They have to.
You
And
definitely highlight something that's extremely important here is I think the industry gets lumped in as the industry, natural resource industry. The people that work there a lot of the times are trying to do the best they can to make it as environmentally friendly as possible. People are meeting the regulations. They're bending over backwards to do what they need to do to help the environment. It's not always the case of it's not always the workers, the engineers, the people on the pipes and things like that are doing a bad job. They're doing their job and they're doing it the best they can. I think it just kind of gets lumped up as a whole industry as like people think like the people who own it are greedy and they just want more money. They don't care about the environment. But then you get the people who work in there, who live in the towns and in the places in the remote areas where they go, and they want to see something good. They want to make sure their homes are fine and their areas are fine, right?
yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, you just got to do the best job you can with
Yeah.
what you've got, and lead from your own sort of morals and ethics when it comes down to the environment. You see somebody doing something, you got to question it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Now, you had a big pivot at that point. Like, obviously, the big pivot moving from the UK to move to BC. And then you have a big pivot of like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to say, I'm earning a good amount of money here. Like, I'm comfortable and I can live on my own and I can do what I can, whether I want to ski, bike, or sail, right? At the same day or on different days. It's a pretty nice life that you had going on. Then you're like, you know what? I don't like money that much. I'm going to be poor for like 5 years, not earn money for 5 years, but I'm going to develop something interesting. But the first iteration, as you said, that you said you failed at, was to build a boat yourself. Why did you want to just build that boat?
So it was like being an engineer and a sailor. I decided to put my skill set and my passion together. And at the end of the day, you've got to do what you love.
Yeah.
And engineering and sailing is what I love. So I put them together and designed and built this 40-foot sailing catamaran. Amazing sailboat. We were sailing at 17 knots of boat speed and 22 knots of breeze. Just phenomenal
Yeah.
boat. And the goal was really to make it all electric. That was the key. It had to be lightweight, fast, lots of hydro generation, but it also had a lot of solar generation as well because we didn't want to have to even use sort of like mains grid electricity. We didn't want to charge up.
Right.
We wanted the boat to be fully self sufficient. And the solar sucked that bad that we had to go sailing to hydrogenerate to charge the batteries. And that's
Oh.
where we were like, okay, we got to fix this solar problem. This is a big problem, and it's not just for my boat that I designed that we had the problem, but like when we set out and built this catamaran, we knew nothing about solar,
Right.
and it was only through understanding and sort of learning about solar that we realized that the current solutions really weren't that good. There's basically the regular solar panels that you put on your house, which I wasn't going to put on a beautiful looking boat, just big
Yeah, they're not very good looking.
aluminum frame, really heavy solar panels.
Yeah.
Or there's the leisure type, the semi-flex ones. And what we realized with those is they have three fundamental flaws. The first one being real estate utilization. They come in standard panels, standard sort of rectangles, and you can only fit so many on the roof of the boat, and then
Yeah.
you end up with a lot of wasted space. The third problem with them is they suffer micro cracks horrendously. They're just two
Okay.
pieces of plastic encapsulating the cell, and you look at them wrong and they crack. You carry them wrong on the install, they crack. And sort of having all the cells in series means that if one cell sort of starts to degrade and the current drops, then the whole panel's affected. And if multiple panels are connected together, the entire string is affected.
Gotcha.
So and then there's the shading issue. It's a sailboat. We got a rig, we got a boom, we got a mast, we got lots of other rigging and lots of shading going on. So again, having shaded solar cells really cuts down the performance. So we had these problems and we set out to solve them. If we were to, as a sort of an objective originally for our boat, so we could have a truly sustainable sort of sailboat, which we didn't need to plug in or run a generator. But then we realized it was more than that, and we could really sort of we could really facilitate the electrification of the marine and other industries if we were able to achieve what we set out to do.
And so this is you wanted the goal was to have a standalone solar panel or a number of solar panels on a boat. I assume the number of solar panels depend on the size of the boat to get the boat going. That didn't need to plug in when you're on the shore, and so that's why you had the solar panels. So you want an electric boat that didn't need to plug in because there are some boats that you need to plug in. This one you don't need to plug in; you just get it from the ocean. Um, that's wonderful. That sounds like the ideal place. It's supposed to be light. It's supposed to be semi-flexible, as you mentioned, so that can fit like a boat contour. It look like it's part of the boat.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Doesn't sound like there are many of those available, and so and you obviously the ones that are have some problems with it. So how does that go? Like obviously it's a challenge for you as an engineer. You're like I'm going to make this work. Like where do you say where's my like when do you say like this is my breaking point of it if it works or it doesn't work or how do I get this to work as an entrepreneur kind of thing?
Basically, it's a commitment thing. So we found 500 ways how not to build our product. Um, we knew we had to encapsulate the solar cells in fiberglass.
Yeah.
The goal there was to make it strong, lightweight, durable. We had to create an incredibly clear fiberglass, and through by putting an incredibly impermeable object right in the middle of the fiberglass laminate, and
Gotcha.
that was the challenge. And it had to be completely optically clear.
Yeah.
So we didn't get any degradation in performance of the cells, and so that's what we've done. This is just a very small sample of that panel.
Okay.
As you can see, this is a non-slip version. You can walk on them,
Wow.
and it just looks like a black panel. It's a black piece of fiberglass with a clear coat on and non-slip.
That does not look like a solar panel.
No, it doesn't, and it's that thin. So it's 1.3 millimeters thick.
Wow.
Incredibly lightweight.
Yeah.
It's flexible.
Yeah.
And you can beat it.
Yeah. So it could take
and
it.
You have no micro cracking because all of that stress and force is taken in by the fiberglass instead of the plastic. So there's no elongation for the cell to crack into.
Unreal. How long did it take to come up with that concept?
Again, about 500 ways on not to do it, and it took quite a while, about 18 months of R&D to figure out the sort of the secret sauce and the magic to make it happen. And then obviously we were building them manually, which isn't cost effective in Canada.
No.
The labor costs are far too high. So now we're in the process of automating that sort of entire production. So we
Okay.
can manufacture in Canada. That was again another a goal of building the boat, and a goal of the company was we can manufacture in Canada and we can be successful. We
Yeah.
just got to be smarter about it.
Gotcha. So now, when did you start this company? Was it 2019 technically, like as building the boat, but then pivoting to the solar panels?
Yeah, so 2019 we started a little bit before that. We built
Yeah.
a canoe and an ACAT, a foiling ACAT, and then just sort of learn about composites, learn about sort of boat design, boat building,
Yeah.
and then yeah, 2019 we went straight in and started the started to build the molds for this 40 foot catamaran.
Got you. And now you're at a point now. Where are you at? Are you at a point where you can mass produce these and you can actually put them on boats?
Yeah, so we have about 15 or so pilot projects out there on the water, all
Nice.
at sort of different stages of product development. But we're now at a spot where we've, about 3 months ago, we nailed down the exact sort of recipe, the process, and now we're looking to get into full production. Our order back is about 4 or 5 months long at our
Yeah.
current production rates, but we're looking to increase production over the next couple of months, and then really get out there to the market and allow people to put as much solar as they can and basically on the boats to again facilitate the electrification of the marine and transportation sectors. And that's where we're heading is anything that moves, anything that's in harsh environments, our panels are perfect.
Now it's really funny because you make that last little paragraph that you just told me there, that answer, you made it sound like it was like nothing. That's pretty exciting. 15 pilot projects, and you found like the actual formula now. You know what to make. That's super exciting to see. And now you're saying like, look, we're going to start putting it out so they can get as many solar panels on it. So these are not necessarily going to be solar panels on new boats. You can add them to your own existing boat. Is that the idea?
Yeah, so you can basically we can build any size, any shape. So you can add them to existing boats. They'll be on new boats.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, you basically build a template, take a picture of the template, and then
Yeah.
we can build the solar panel to suit. So it can curve to the shape of the boat
Yeah.
and really maximize that real estate utilization because solar's not perfect. It's only right now 24-25% efficient in terms of the
Right.
energy you're getting from the sun. So the conversion rates are not great. So by the time you take into account the little gaps between the solar cells, we're about 215 watts per meter squared,
Right.
and that's not a lot.
Right.
So you really want to utilize that real estate as much as you can. And for a boat, we've actually came up with a product called floating solar. So it's fundamentally an inflatable paddleboard type design, which accordions out and you throw it behind your boat, and it's a 300-watt panel, and it just sits there without any shade and just sits there and generates power.
That's
So
amazing.
again, that's so solving the real estate utilization problem for mostly for monohulls.
Yeah.
Because they don't have huge deck space unlike
Right.
catamarans.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's talk a little bit about just sort of some of the myths around solar. Just in general, because I've talked to people about solar panels, like, oh, we talk about efficiency, but we're also talking about if it's cloudy outside, you're not going to be able to go anywhere. Can you
Mhm.
talk just a little bit about some of the myths of solar, and are they true or not, or some of the things that people say about solar that you may have heard, like, are they true, are they not? What's true, what's not? What do people have to look at when they start to think about using solar on a boat in the ocean?
Yeah, so all the myths or whatever people hear are true because they come up with them, right?
Right.
And it's a direct experience of people. One of the things that we realized is that designing a solar system for a boat actually isn't easy.
Hmm.
um, how the panels are wired together, the voltage that you use, the voltage that you use, the battery voltage, the bypass diode orientation. All of those things have to come into account. Even the direction that the solar panel faces. So
Yeah.
if you have one solar panel on one surface and it faces slightly different direction to the sun than the other surface, then it's the one that has the sort of the least sun angle is going to drive the performance of the panel.
Hmm.
Same with shading as well with bypass diodes. If you orientate a panel the wrong direction and you cast a shadow over the panel, well, you could either eliminate just one string or you can eliminate the entire panel from the circuit.
Right.
So there's a lot to think about when we do a design for a boat, especially a sailboat.
Yeah.
Motorboats, obviously, there's less shading, less issues. Um, but again, still got to be thoughtful in terms of voltages, current, whether it's going to be series or parallel, what solar controllers to use.
Yeah.
So we don't recommend just people go in to put a panel on the boat and say, now I've got solar, because they won't. They won't have good performance.
Right.
So you really got to think about it, how the panels are orientated, how they're strung together, with how the bypass diodes are orientated. All those things have got to be thought about when you start to design your array.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about that. And then a lot of boat people who have boats, they're really in tune with their boats. They know what it's net like what's needed and what's not. So I feel like having this is a good market to work with because you know looking at what they do with their boat, how often they service their boat, and they get to know it quite well. It'd be easy to work with them. So I guess a lot of these jobs would be almost like a custom uh, sort of job, right? Because you don't know because everybody's going to be different in terms of how many panels they're going to use and so forth.
Exactly. So we do have standard products that you can just go and put on the boat, but again, not that successful in terms of how much power you're going to generate.
Right.
But then when it comes to sort of more of the electrification of the drive system, and you become more reliant on solar now rather than a nice to have,
Yeah.
then it's got to be designed right. So yeah, we get into doing sort of custom designs, working around hatches
Yeah.
and rigging lines and travelers and things like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we can maximize the amount of real estate and then minimize the amount of downtime from shading issues.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. What about like things like in terms of efficiency, like clouds? And obviously, you're up in Canada. It gets cloudy at times. Do you have? Does it? Are people going to have trouble gaining enough sunlight when it's cloudy outside?
Yeah, it's definitely an issue, right? Solar relies on the sun. When it's bright out, in terms of sort of light cloud, you can get up to 25% out of a solar panel.
Okay.
Obviously, a really thick, cloudy day, maybe you're down to 5%.
Yeah.
Um, but at the end of the day, most of us are using our boats in the summer
Yeah.
when it's nice out,
Yes.
and then we've got lots of solar, right?
Right.
Um, some of us go out in the winter.
When they after they ski and bike, right? The same
Exactly.
day.
But yeah, it's definitely a thing. But it's like anything with sailing. You have to think about where you're going, what the
Yeah.
tides are, what the currents are, what the wind's doing.
Yeah.
And it's just another thing to think about. What's my power consumption? If you're going to commit to an electric boat, then you add one other tactic that you've got to deal with in
Right.
terms of, like with my boat, for example, it'll do 9 knots under power
Wow.
for about 10 minutes, and then the battery's dead.
Gotcha.
Where
Gotcha.
typically, if we're running 12 kilowatt drives full belt,
Yeah.
yeah, you've only got a few, maybe 15 minutes. So
Okay.
that means I can't go through some of the narrows in the wrong tide, where
Right.
maybe you can with the diesel, because you don't have that energy density.
Gotcha.
So again, it's just another thing to think about as a sailor. When you go out, you've got your power management to deal with as well.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too because I have an EV like a car, and I find like I have to do just a little extra planning when I go out to make sure like if I'm going on a long trip, I got to make sure that I can find the right where all the chargers are so that I can
Mm.
do it in line. I can continue on with myself. You don't want to run out of just like you don't want to run out of gas. You don't want to run out of electricity. Now, of course, I have the opportunity to pull over and go to a charger and charge over as someone who with a gas powered vehicle can go over and get some gas. That's not always the case in the ocean, depending on where you're going and areas. You probably want to go to a remote place and enjoy yourself and do some fishing or swimming or whatever that might be, or just sailing around. So you're not always around this. So you have to just plan a little bit just to make sure that you can have it. Now, so when you talk about having an electric boat like a solar boat like this, are people using part solar and part like engine like diesel?
Yeah, so we've actually there's been a big, certainly in the new boat world,
Yeah.
there's a lot of hybrid boats being built right now.
Oh, okay.
Whereas we've already done two projects for hybrid boats where it's a diesel electric, and that's very efficient when it comes to generating power. You're running the diesel engine at a constant speed. It's tuned for the generator,
Yeah.
and then when you're doing close marina sort of maneuvers, then you're just in with the electric drive.
Gotcha.
We're doing an 80-foot catamaran right now, where we're doing 24 kilowatts of solar. It's an 80-foot expedition yacht, and we'll be able to handle sort of all of the hotel loads with the solar. So
Wow.
he can sit at an anchorage and not have to run a diesel generator.
Yeah.
If he wants to cross the Atlantic, yeah, he's going to have to run his engines. Like batteries aren't that good right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going to get better, but they're not the solution, right?
Yeah.
So there is compromises that you need to take when if you want to switch to electric.
Well,
Um,
and this is the
those
beginning.
compromises you just got to think about a little bit.
Yeah, and this is just the beginning of it, right? Like it's just like EVs in the car industry. They're going to get better and better as you go along. Like you are really just starting. Like as you said, some of the panels that you tried before you started this venture weren't the greatest, and they chipped a lot and they broke a lot. Now you're getting a little bit more durable. You're getting a little bit more length out of it, a little bit more usability, and then I'm sure over time that iteration is going to get even longer and longer as you go through and as you discover more and we do more. I find a lot of people right now they expect like the best right off the bat, and you just can't, like that's not how it works. Like even the car when it was first invented, it was never just the best. Like the gas powered car, it was never just like from what we get now to a Porsche. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it wasn't like that. And it was slow, and there was a lot of problems with it, and I'm sure people didn't love them right off the bat. This I love the fact that you can do this, because even if you run it side by side with a hybrid and use it with a hybrid engine, at least you're powering it. You're using less noise on the water. You're enjoying it a lot more
mm-hmm.
because you don't have to have the noise. That you get to
Exactly.
really hear the ocean. You know, when you're on the water and you want to power through somewhere, you can really hear nature. You can really hear what's going on. Maybe a whale or two in that time. You know, you never know.
Yeah,
You live in a very productive area, so I think it'd be kind of cool to see that. But I think that's what is the real benefit from an ocean perspective is that noise. On your website, you actually talk about that a little bit about not creating noise to protect oceans. Can you talk a little bit about that?
yeah. So like anything, there's like within BC, we got BC ferries. They're obviously making huge amounts of noise.
Yeah.
Um, but you do what you can, right? And obviously, there's studies out there which have said sort of marine use by humans affects
Yeah.
sort of the marine population, the marine mammals.
Yeah.
So again, you do what you can, which is not perfect, but you
No.
do what you can to help out, right? And
Yeah.
then do your part. If everyone did their part,
Yeah.
then everything would be a lot better. So we're just facilitating that process, just providing a technical solution to give people the opportunities to generate more power from the sun,
Right.
let the panels last longer so they're actually usable in 5 years' time,
Yep.
um, and give people that option to enjoy nature quieter.
I love that. I think that's where it's at, right? It's just keeping nature quieter. I think
Hmm.
that's what we always want, and I think it's a great way to enjoy life and enjoy the ocean. Um, I did have a question. I forgot what my train of thought was, but I'll get it in a second. You know, when you look at this here's the question I had. You mentioned you had 15 pilot studies. How did you get people? Is this on people's actual boats, or are these like test boats?
Yeah, so we've really done no marketing right now. We have the website. We just got a new marketing manager, Tony. He's done an excellent job on the website and setting up interviews like this so we can get the word out there.
Yeah,
But until we're actually in production, in sort of automated production, then we're not marketing too heavily right now because again we
yeah,
can't
of
keep up
course,
with the demand.
of course.
But the people that we have put their panels on have been really happy with them, and they've come to us and said, look, we've got a problem here, and a number of projects have actually been where we've been replacing original solar panels put down because they just weren't performing like they
Right,
should be.
right.
So we've done several projects where we've actually taken solar panels off and put down ours because the
Hmm.
customer gets it. He wants solar. They want solar. They want to be independent.
Yeah.
And we did one project. At the very first project we did, he sailed around Vancouver 2.5 times. Sorry, Vancouver Island 2.5 times
Wow.
in the summer and didn't plug in once.
No.
And granted, it is a diesel drive boat and it is a sailboat, but again, it's the summer. You're using induction stove, you're using lights, you're using air conditioning, and the solar power generation meant that he didn't need to plug in once. And really, he was not in marinas anyway. He didn't have to go to a marina, so he could save a lot of costs there. He could anchor out, and hence he would just put the sails up and sail to the next destination. He's not hydrogenerating in that scenario.
Hmm.
Um, so all of the hotel loads have to come from solar. All your navigation systems, all your electronics have to come from solar power.
And he was able to do that.
And so that was a great case study where he's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't needed to run the generator, run the engines for the purpose of charging the batteries, and I haven't needed to plug in for 2.5 laps of Vancouver Island. So that was pretty good to hear.
That's unreal to hear that story.
Mhm.
It really makes a difference when you hear the case studies like that. To say, I go around at Vancouver Island, which is a big island. We're not talking about a small island here, and to be able to do it 2.5 times without having to go into a marina,
Mhm.
that's incredible. That's
Yeah.
absolutely to charge. So that's phenomenal. Now, when you get the solar panels, it goes to a battery. Is that it?
Yeah, so typical solar, you got to go from the solar panel to a breaker, then to
Yeah.
an MPPT, ideally to another breaker, do it safely, and then into the battery bank. So
Okay.
when people are designing a solar system, I always say work backwards from what you're going to use. So
Yeah.
figure out what your loads are. Figure out if you have air conditioning, is that 110 system? What are the loads? How long do you want to run that for typically? What is the power supply there? What's the demand? Um, what's your fridge drawer, right?
Yeah.
What is your do you have a water maker? What's that drawer? Do you have an electric heater? What's that drawer? And then so you write out all of the drawers, the electrical current drawers, and then you say, right, now assuming there's no power available to me, how big do I need my batteries? How long do I want to run for?
Yeah.
Right, with my battery bank. So now you've got your battery bank sized. And
Yeah.
then you look at the solar and say, right, how how long do I want to be away from plugging in to charge those batteries up? And hopefully your boat's big enough that you can put enough solar on is to satisfy the demand and use the
Yeah.
battery more of a surge capacitor.
Gotcha.
So you've got nighttime use of power and charge up in the daytime. Um, but yeah, I always tell people work backwards from what you're going to use
Yeah.
to figure out how much you need.
I think definitely it's common sense when you talk about it that way. Not a lot of people think that way, but now we start thinking about how much we draw on electricity. I love having the batteries, and the batteries are going to get more efficient and better as we go along too. And I think that's going to help the industry both not only in cars but also obviously in boats. And maybe you can do a 5 time, double that around Vancouver Island. I think that would be
Exactly.
pretty cool to hear that.
Yeah.
This is incredible, and it's going to be on the market once everything goes into production, and you find a way, or you found a way to do it. Now it's just a matter of putting it through. That's going to be amazing. When do you hope that this is, and this is obviously fingers crossed, knocking on wood. When do you hope that these can be sold on a regular basis?
Yeah, so we have orders right now, but we'll say we're still manually building the panels.
Yeah.
So by April, May time in this year, we'll have the production up and running, and we'll be really going to the market hard and really communicating what we've got, what are the
Yeah.
benefits of it.
Yeah.
And we'll be at a lot of the boat shows. We're actually at the Seattle Boat Show
Okay.
from the 28th of, Vancouver Boat Show from the 28th to the 30th in Intrepid Marines booth. So look out for us there. And then we're
Nice.
at the Seattle Boat Show. Open Waters has their own booth there at the Seattle Boat Show early February.
Nice.
So come by, come check us out, and come have a chat about solar solutions for your boat.
Absolutely. Now, if people like, I'll send them to the website if people want to get more information. Um, and if people and if they live, do they have to live on the west coast or like of North America, or can they, like, you can do these anywhere?
Yeah, we've shipped to Vietnam, to
Oh
Turkey, to
wow.
Finland. We will be shipping to New Zealand this month, the
Oh wow.
UK. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're shipping globally already.
Yeah.
That was important for us to sort of establish sort of the product in various areas. We are in British Columbia. It is cold, so we
Yeah.
needed
Yeah.
some exposure, some tropical tropical heat too. So we've sold
Especially in
into
the winter months.
yeah, we've sold into Carriacou
Nice.
down in the ABC Islands and
Nice.
also down into Florida, a couple of projects as well.
Very nice.
So yeah, these panels have seen some heat, some
Yeah.
humidity.
Nice.
Um,
How is the rest of the boating industry reacting to this type of technology?
well, it's like I said, we've really not gone to market in
Right.
a big way yet. We are going to Mets Trade in November this year, so that'll
Yeah.
be sort of a big display of the technology. But like I said earlier, a lot of manufacturers are moving towards hybrid boats. So what that
Yeah.
starts to mean is that solar now becomes a necessity
Yeah.
than a nice to have. So when
Yeah.
it's a nice to have, it's trickle charging the batteries, it's keeping them charged. So when you go out, your battery's not dead. It's a really nice to have. You really don't care. You're not keeping track of the solar. But when it's a necessity, when you really have the option to drive your boat on electrical power, not run the diesel engines, then you've really got to pay attention. And
Yeah.
for that, you need quality panels that are going to last.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is if you're taking all this real estate up on a boat, real estate's precious. You want to use it. You want to be able to throw a yoga mat down or have a dance party on it. And
Yeah.
without panels, you can. They're fully adhered to the boat. They
Yeah.
become part of the structure, and you can just use the surface like any other surface. So you're not compromising on use and
Do
being
they
able
get
to.
hot?
What was that? Sorry.
Do they get hot?
They do get hot. They're black surface. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the nature of solar,
Yeah.
it is a black surface. They do get warm. The best thing about black surfaces is if there's a breeze blowing across them, there's a natural cooling. Worst case is that you've got full sun, zero
Yeah.
breeze, and yeah, they can get pretty toasty.
Which is not
Uh,
really ideal for sailing anyway.
yeah, so you want to wear deck shoes if you're
Yeah.
walking on them
Yeah.
when it's that warm. But typically, you're sailing. There's breeze. You're moving through the water. There's breeze. That's a cooling effect, and yeah, we end up being solar panels maybe being 5 or 10 degrees above ambient.
Amazing. Okay, cool. This is a lot of fun. So people can check you out. I'm gonna, if you send me those links, I'm gonna put those in the show notes of where you're gonna be in those boat shows, so that people can come and talk to you. I think this is such a great technology. I can't wait for it to like start seeing it everywhere on boats. You should start to market to some of the government boats too, like to get them on like those field boats, those the environmental people's field boats and DFO
Yeah,
and
the
stuff like that.
applications are endless. We've started in the
Yeah.
marine sector, the leisure marine, because of the demand, right?
Yeah.
There's a want there to get off
Yeah.
diesel, to get onto electric house loads, electric propulsion. There's a real want there,
Yeah.
and that's going to follow suit down into industry as well. And when it comes to industry, it's all about money, right? It's all about
Yeah.
cost savings. So
Yeah.
if you can displace diesel with
Oh yeah.
electric, you're just now talking about ROI, your return on your investment.
Yeah.
And we can put solar panels on a 53-foot refrigerated trailer and give the owners of those reefer trailers about a 3-year ROI.
Yeah. Amazing.
Which again, so the leisure industry, it's nice to have, people want it, but in the commercial space,
Yeah.
it's always going
It's
to be
a
about money,
yeah.
and we allow people to get off diesel and to get onto electric sort of power when they have large real estate. The
Yeah.
downside is I don't think you'll ever see solar on a car, and if it is, it's
No.
a bit of a gimmick. You just don't have the
Yeah.
real estate.
You need a big enough boat to do
You
it.
need a big surface area,
Yeah.
so big boats, catamarans.
Yeah.
We're going to see solar on ships eventually.
Yeah.
So BC Ferries, biggest ferry company
Yeah.
in the world, or one of the biggest ferry companies in the world, they're starting to switch to electric. So again, we can
There's a lot of
take
opportunity there.
that energy and put it
Yeah.
straight into those batteries and use them for propulsion. And yeah, it's not going to be the solution,
Right.
but it'll take the demand off or the load off the grid as well when you're then trying to
Absolutely.
charge up.
Absolutely. I love that. I love how Simon, you took your two passions, you meld them together. You're like, I'm going to help find solutions for these. It's phenomenal what you've been able to do. You and your team have been able to do. I think it's great. I can't wait to see what's happening in like 6 months to a year. I'd love to have you back on and be able to talk more about what's been happening to get updates. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast and discussing this with us and telling your story, because this is where I feel like we really need to push forward, is highlight companies who are doing not only good for the ocean, but just good for people and their businesses and their money, and getting it cheaper. And I think it's wonderful. So thank you so much, Simon, for joining me on today's episode. We really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure, and it was great chatting. I love talking about something that's passionate, so it's good.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, cheers.
Thank you, Simon, for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I love bringing this type of content to you, the audience, because it's something that we all need to hear about. I didn't know this was happening. I didn't know this was happening until the marketing manager, Tony, reached out to me after I put out an episode on how China's putting solar panels in the ocean to get more energy for its people. That's pretty cool. And Tony's like, hey, you know what? You got to really look at what Simon's doing with open water solar. It's incredible, and it's going to change the boating industry in the future. And it definitely has. He talked about how he was an engineer and how he came up in the oil and gas industry and then the pulp and paper industry and moving to different industries. And he's like, you know what? I want to do something that's good. I want to build a boat, put solar on it, make it completely self-sustainable so I don't have to charge, I don't have to plug in. And then he realized, well, the solar panels that they have now, like currently, weren't that great. So he decided, hey, you know what? We're going to make a better one. And he decided to do that. And he has done that. And he is making it for everybody else. And I just think it's amazing. And so I'm going to put up the website so people can get in touch. I'm going to put up any social media sites so you can take a look at what they're up to. And I'm going to put those dates that he talked about and the boat shows in the show notes as well. And if you have any questions for me, you want to talk to me, hit me up on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean. And of course, you can see me on YouTube, on Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. All you have to do is just click subscribe on those platforms and hit the notification bell so you don't miss an episode. And that's our episode for today. I am your host, Andrew Lewin. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.